Peace, family. Y'all know who it is. It's Bakari Lumumba, back once again, the progenitor of LumumbaSpeaks.com, a Black empowerment initiative where we believe we could gain a competitive advantage while always betting on Black. Back once again this evening, we're doing a dual stream live with, of course, the Bequaline Network, the Pan-African Media Extraordinaire, and, of course, Lumumba Speaks, Black Empowerment Initiative, where we believe we can gain a competitive advantage by always, keyword always, not sometimes, but always betting on Black. We're going to have a great discussion this evening in which we're discussing how to combat the hip hop to prison pipeline, the music of mass incarceration. If many of you follow my show, you know that weeks ago we did a show deconstructing Candace Owens' Breakfast Club interview. And in part of that conversation, I believe that, a broken clock is right twice a day. Candace Owens talked about the hip hop to prison pipeline. I said, hey, I think that is a great soundbite. And so we're going to do a show on it. But before we get started, family, make sure you hit the subscribe and like button as well as the notification bell on both Bequaline Network and Lumumba Speaks. We want you to always be updated for future videos. But before we get started, family, I want to go over two things. One, if you have frequented the actual description, the link to the conversations in the description. But also I shared a link to an article that I wrote on Medium. I'm going to actually share the article in the chat. Make sure you follow me on Medium. The article is titled "An Open Letter to Hip Hop I Used to Love Her." So make sure you check that out. And more importantly, your boy been doing some writing, and I want to share latest book. I am a co-author of Educational Leadership and Critical Theory. What can school leaders learn from critical theorists? I've written a chapter in this book titled African American Education for Liberation in 21st Century America, From Critical Theory to Black Power, by myself. So make sure you tap in. Hope you can support your brother by going to bloomsburypress.com. I can put the link in the chat, making sure that you purchase the book. Once again, I wrote a chapter on African American Education for Liberation, and of course the book. Also, I'll be remiss in my duty if I did not go over today's Black History Fact. Today's Black History Fact took place 159 years ago. It was Adam Clayton Powell Sr. was born May 5th, 1865 in Franklin County, Virginia. Reverend Powell was the pastor of Abyssinian Baptist Church in Harlem, New York City. Under his leadership, the church grew to have the largest Protestant congregation in the United States with 10,000 members. Powell was one of the founders of the National Urban League and the father of Adam Clayton Powell Jr., who followed him as the pastor of Abyssinian Baptist Church. His son, Adam Clayton Powell Jr., was also a United States congressman who represented Harlem for 12 terms. So before we get started, family, I want to bring in, of course, my big brother in Black Power, none other but Steve Muhammad of Black Stage Productions, and, of course, Knowledge for Life. How you doing, brother Muhammad?
Doing well, praise due to Allah. First one to begin, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, I would like to thank you for allowing me to be a part of your program on this topic. I would like to greet all of your listening and viewing audience in the greeting words of peace of Assalamu alaikum, Hotep, or Shalom alaikum, or if you're Christian, we'll just throw out praise the Lord. One thing that we all have to recognize is that, all of those greetings in essence mean peace, right? Assalamu alaikum is a prayer of peace. So we want to recapture, and that's what we're going to be talking about in all actuality. We want to recapture our culture and reject the alien culture, because the alien culture says that we greet each other in the greeting words of hello, or we greet each other in the greeting words of hi, and we're all trying to get high because we're in a low condition of hell, right? Or we're so low that we greet each other with what's up because we so down, or we greet each other with what's going on because we don't know what's going on. We've been lied to, we've been deceived. So, to greet each other in the greeting words of Hotep or Assalamu alaikum or Shalom, that's the best greetings. Never greet each other in the greeting words of our enemy of hello anymore.
Absolutely. So very quickly, family, before we get this conversation started, because I'm quite sure Brother Muhammad gave you that teaser, so you're definitely interested in hearing what he has to say. Want to make sure we go over some of the ground rules here at Lumumba Speaks and Equaline Network. Number one, diversity of thought is welcome. So when we open up the conversation, brothers and sisters, tap in, be part of the combo. Diversity of thought is welcome, irrespective if you're on the left, you're on the right, or right down the middle. This is a place for, of course, excuse me, intelligent Black conversation. Number two, no racial epithets of any kind are allowed. This is a space of Black empowerment. We believe in 3 years of Black power, self-respect, self-defense, and of course, last but not least, self-determination. So no epithets of any kind are allowed. If you use an epithet, you will be removed from the conversation. If you look at some of my previous videos, you know I have a history of doing that. No epithets of any kind whatsoever. Facts over feelings, family. So if I, Brother Muhammad, or someone else taps in, you disagree with something we're saying, attack the argument and not the person. We're all adults here. Attack the argument and not the person. No ad hominem attacks. And then, of course, last but not least, now I say this with all the conviction that my soul can muster. No fundamentally false statements whatsoever. As you all know, this is my platform, and I'm responsible for the information that's disseminated on my platform. You can have an opinion, right? You can have the opinion that LeBron James is the GOAT over Michael Jordan. I might think you cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, but that's a conversation for another day. But if you were to claim that LeBron was the GOAT because Michael Jordan only won 2 championships, that would be an example of a fundamentally false statement. If you claim that LeBron James was the GOAT, that is an opinion. Opinions are allowed, but fundamentally false statements are not. And last but not least, family, our mission here at Lumumba Speaks is neither to exonerate or vilify, but to simply challenge conventional wisdom and re-examine what has previously been accepted as fact. So very quickly, family, before we get the conversation started, want to make sure that you all hit the subscribe and the like button and the thumbs up and the notification bell for updates on all future, of course, broadcasts. And so before we get started, we get into the conversation. We all know, well, according to Dr. Neil Irving Painter of Princeton University, in her seminal text, Creating Black Americans, 1619 to the Present, she states that there are 5 aspects of hip hop culture: emceeing, DJing, b-boying, b-girling, what we know and call breakdancing, graffiti, and of course, clothing and or knowledge of the movement. We also know that rap music was born during an era of economic vulnerability, right? Tough on law crimes, policies, so on and so forth. But in the late 80s, in the golden era of hip hop, a Black nationalist style emerged in rap music, continued the tradition of earlier songs that trained a spotlight on policies that facilitated economic and social disenfranchisement of Black communities. Public Enemy, one of the most successful groups of this era in terms of political and conscious artists. In the 1988, the group released Black Steel and the Hour of Chaos on their album It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back. And I know Brother Steve knows what I'm talking about there.
Oh, yeah.
The song tells the story of a Black man who was incarcerated, who escaped from prison and refused to join the U.S. Army because he believed society mistreated Black men. The group's follow-up album, Fear of a Black Planet, deals with the themes of anti-miscegenation and white supremacy, institutional neglect, and racism and Black pride. In particular, the hit track 911 is a joke describes how first responders, medical personnel, etc., were slow to react to the emergency calls for needs of Black people. We know this is still an issue to this day. So once again, we're going to re-welcome my big brother in Black Power, Brother Steve Muhammad. Most of you all don't know, we're both from Dayton, Ohio, the Gym City. Shout out to the 937. And we both share a birthday. And this is a secret that many of you don't know. The greatest people in the history of the world were born on September 26th. So we definitely want to give a shout out to our esteemed ancestor, Winnie Mandela, who we, of course, share a birthday with. And you can't mention Winnie Mandela without mentioning Nelson Mandela.
That's right.
Steve, we're going to tap right in with this conversation. When did you fall in love with hip hop?
Man, when did I fall in love with hip hop? I think that you touched on it really when you talked about Public Enemy. You know, I think for me, I've always had that type of militant mindset, and it wasn't necessarily because of any type of hatred towards white people or anything like that, right? But it was a sense of hatred towards injustice, right? That I saw. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so when I heard Fight the Power, you know, and Fight the Power, you know, that can include white, black, red, yellow, fight the power, you know, and the power that we're talking about is an unjust power,
right, an abusive
power,
absolutely,
an abusive power, a power that tries to, we right now are talking freely, but this power that we're talking about is trying to stomp out free speech, which
right.
is written in the Constitution.
Come on now.
What we see going on the campuses of America is just it's a blaring sign for all of us that we should take note of, that our free speech, when it comes down to a certain people, is being curtailed, where if you talk about these people in any type of way, which we're going to probably talk about tonight,
any
but
critique whatsoever is seen as problematic, unbecoming.
Yes. Even though it's factual, even though it's true. And so this is the real fear. And so getting back to that, so yeah, I think, and then it was Tribe Called Quest.
Right.
It was, because they throw in just a little bit of that jazz. Right. And, it was just a mixture. The thing about hip hop, which makes it so beautiful, which it's gotten away from, I think, today. Right. Because when I was growing up, you could listen to hip hop and it would have rock and roll. It would have Led Zeppelin as the background. It would have jazz as the background. It would have, whatever. I mean, it was just a mixture, a cornucopia of sound, right? But today they just that 808. You know what I'm saying? They're just leaning on that low level drum beat, and that in and of itself has to be studied, because it's not a high level beat, it's a low level beat, keeping us in that lower, lower mindset. So yeah, that's when I fell in love with it in the 90s.
Absolutely. Right. I'm with you 100%, but I would share my story. I fell in love with hip hop in the fall of '88. Right. I think it was a Grandmaster Flash. What was the song? Don't Push Me Because I'm Close to the Edge. I'm trying not to lose my and I remember we were on my parents' porch, and I'm the baby in my family. I think I shared this with you. And we were having a cipher session, and the kids in the neighborhood were all freestyling. And I remember my brother said, "Well, you're too young, so you can't rap, but you can bebop." And I gained a reputation in the neighborhood as the kid who could bebop. So people saw me as what's the brother who would bebop all the time? Dougie Fresh. As Dougie Fresh. So that's my story of when I fell in love with hip hop. But let me ask you this question: why is rap music so influential amongst the younger generation?
Man, I think that it just comes out of our tradition as a people, right? So when we look at music, well, we got to remember because a lot of young people may not understand it because of the music of today, right? But the music of yesterday, really, it was us telling a truthful story, right? We were telling our experience, but also the thing about rap was that it was a way that we could, share a message of either encouragement or a movement message. You know what I mean? It was a way of telling our story. And then you couple that with our drums, our beat, So I think that's really, where I, fell in love with rap. And is that the question was what?
How did rap? Why is rap music so influential?
So influential. So yeah, definitely it takes, it's a combination of our storytelling and the drum. It's just us, really, what it comes down to, right? And so if you remember when rap first started, they tried to give the white mainstream media tried to give rap a death sentence, right? Saying that it wasn't going to last long and it's on its way out. And now look at it, right? It's global, it's international. And we do have to remember that all of this started not in it wasn't planned by the music industry. It happened organically.
Right.
Right. not only did it happen organically, but you got to even think about the mathematics that went into how rap music started, right? So the scratching, right? That scratching was somebody who was able to hear, they heard the scratch, then they was able to mathematically pull the hand back and start it right at, I mean, it's amazing. You know what I mean? So here's a people who have nothing, but with nothing make something.
Right.
That's powerful. So I think that, you know, rap is once again, it comes from our spirit, our soul, our history, our culture. You know, now the problem today is that anything that the Western society gets its hands on, it capitalizes on it, right?
Right.
And so where it's no longer natural, now it's mechanical, right? Now it's something that is used today as a weapon of mass deception, right? As a weapon of manipulation and conditioning, right? So when you listen to the music or the rap that you hear are women rapping, and one of the things that I want to say is that when I talk about the rappers, I'm not even talking about a particular rapper, right? Because to a large degree, our rappers are being used by this unseen hand, right? As a tool of this unseen hand. But what the rap music that you hear today that is doing is trying to condition, for instance, our women. It's trying to condition them to take off their clothes, right? It's trying to condition them to use their body to make money. It's trying to condition them to as less than the woman of God that they are, right? And so that's what I think that we have to look at the message that is being disseminated over the rap over the airwaves today, and not all rap,
right,
but most of the rap that we hear, it's particularly in smaller cities. Those top 40, that's being controlled by that.
And why do you think that's the case? Why do you think the music of today is seeking to, as I said it in my piece on Medium, move our young women into being sexually lascivious individuals?
Yeah, I think that once again, those powers that be, they see that they see the future of Black people. They see the greatness of Black people, and they see that they have to continue to control the narrative, so to speak. And so when we hear these type of rap songs, we have to understand that there are a lot of, okay, so let's look at it. They say that our people don't want to listen to the conscious rap, right, or the conscious music. But when you look at the biggest songs that were released, you're talking about, let's say, for instance, Kanye West, Jesus Walks.
Right.
I mean, that's conscious, right? When you look at one of the biggest artists, female artists, that was Lauryn Hill.
Right.
She came out with hit after hit. All of them
she set the record for the highest selling hip hop album by a female artist. In fact, she won, I think, 5 Grammys, including Grammy of the Year, in which she beat Madonna. Right. So we know that if you have skills, you don't have to take the clothes off. You don't have to promote yourself as a, sexually lascivious individual that glamorizes, being engaging in the fast life, as they say. Right. So there's a history here. And so that leads me to my next question. How did hip hop become the music of mass incarceration, and why? Well, I should say rap. As we all know, there's a difference between hip hop and rap. As Karis once said, rappers spit rhymes that are mostly illegal. MCs spit rhymes to uplift their people. Right. So there's a difference there. How did rap become the music of mass incarceration, and why?
Yeah, that's a so the thing there was a most people may not know that white people have what's called think tanks, right?
Hmm.
They have think tanks where they come together. One think tank is called ALEC, ALEC, right? And they came together and they implemented three strikes, you're in. They implemented mandatory sentencing. They implemented one other one. I think it was um, three strikes, mandatory sentencing, and I can't really think of the other one, right? But one of the things that if we research, and I wish I could find the article, but there was a think tank that came together of the music industry and the prison
Yes,
industry.
I've read on that. Many people are questioning if that's factual, but many have argued that it could be. I mean, it's a theory. At the very least, it's a theory. Yes, that the music
Right.
industry and the prison industrial complex came together and said we can criminalize hip hop and make money hand over fist. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And so, the thing about these conspiracy theories, like let's look at the so-called conspiracy theory of the Willie Lynch syndrome. Some people think that, there was no such man named Willie Lynch.
Right.
Okay, so let's say that there wasn't a man called Willie Lynch, right? The fact about it is that what is written in the Willie Lynch letter, though, is a fact.
Right.
Even if
We
that
see
man,
it every day. Yeah,
even
right.
if he didn't exist,
Right.
so okay, I'll go
Throw
with
it out.
you.
We can throw it out.
And,
Right.
and Willie Lynch didn't exist. What's written in the letter of how to control the black man and black woman by destroying the black family and putting the woman the head of the family and the man by buck breaking him, that is a fact. That's
Right.
not a conspiracy theory. So now let's say that they didn't come together. Then the question we have to ask is, why is it that why is it that when you had Public Enemy, right? You had Tribe Called Quest, you
X-Clan,
had X Clan,
De
you
La
had
Soul.
so many conscious rappers, right? And then all of a sudden, you had, and remember at the same time, my brother, that there was a movement on the college campuses too of conscious with Dr. Smalls and other ones who were talking about the greatness of black people and how everything came out of Africa. And
Right.
then there was attack on college professors. And they started writing books called Not Out of Africa, right? And
Right.
at the same time, this all was going on in the 90s. There was
Black Athena. Black Athena is a good example. Black Athena is a good example. Then they came back trying to say, no, this isn't the case. I actually have the book Black Athena, part 1 and 2. Absolutely.
Well, see, there you go. And so they removed the conscious music and then they replaced it with the thug life, right? Or niggas with an attitude, that NWA, right? And so many other gangster rap type of music, right? And just replaced it. But at the same time, they did that same thing. This is what they did to the conscious movement in the 60s, right? Check this out. They assassinated black leaders like Martin Luther King, Medgar Evers. They went in and they demonized the Black Panther Party, right? And guess what they did? They started to produce what was called black exploitation movies.
This is very true.
Glorifying pimping, right?
Criminality, women being fast. Absolutely. Come on.
This is their same playbook. What I'm trying to say.
Absolutely.
This is their same playbook.
Yes.
And so now today they got this playbook running. So now let me say something about the rappers, right? So here you create a condition where a person is not living, right? They're surviving, right? And one of the ways that they see a way to living and not just surviving is through rap. Many of us, when we was growing up, we saw it through basketball,
Right,
or
sports,
many of us
absolutely.
saw it through, you know what I'm saying? We saw it through these avenues that they framed for us, right? We didn't see it unless we ran into somebody through being a doctor. We didn't see it by being a lawyer. We didn't see it by owning our own business, because they framed these things to us on tell a vision, right? Tell a vision. So, right, they control the vision that they wanted to implant in our minds. So now you have a young man who has skill. He's got a God-given skill, but they use that skill to their advantage. So I don't know if you remember or if you heard where Too Short said that he wanted to produce a more conscious album. And they told him that that album wouldn't sell, and that they wanted him to produce another, dirt album. I'll just say it like that, right? And that we'll look at, backing that conscious rap album in the future. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that they pay these artists.
Absolutely.
Not just that they pay them, but they pay them to produce a certain type of music with a certain type of message, right? They don't want to financially back a conscious artist, even though there are plenty of conscious artists that are out there. They don't want to back conscious artists because they understand that the message that is riding in on our drums, our African drums, the message is their message, not our message.
Right.
It's their message that's riding
in
on our drums.
And I think a good example of that is in the group, hip hop group, Black Eyed Peas, right? Most people don't. When you think of the female lead, you think of Fergie, right? But back in the late 90s and early 2000s, the female lead was a sister by the name of Kim Hill. The record label told her, "We want you to start making music and singing about being sexually promiscuous." She said, "I'm not into that." They literally, white record executives told her, "You're not black enough." Literally. I mean, this is still on the internet today. You could go get the article, read on it. So they kicked her out the group. So we see that non-black people are telling black people what blackness is. And as we see, their concept of blackness is rooted in what? Being ratchet, raunchy, self-destructive.
Yeah.
Right. So it's important. This is why we're having this conversation and why we must take control of what we create. Right. Many people, I've had people argue, well, it sounds like you're trying to gatekeep music. And I say that, well, we need to be gatekeepers. Right. I said, when you build fences, you create good neighbors. Right. And I said that the lack of gatekeeping is why we create something and then allow other people to take control of it and then dictate to us what we're going to do with what we created.
Right. That's right.
Unacceptable. So we have to start thinking. I think Dr. John Henry Clark stated that all people have a level of inherent selfishness. Right. We're talking about being ethnocentric. We need to get back to being ethnocentric, particularly when it comes to industry. So let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
And you've spoken on this before. What does it mean to be a sellout?
And once again, like I said, the beautiful thing about the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is he says that these rappers are more influential than preachers today, right? So their message can reach tens of thousands, where preachers can reach maybe thousands. So the thing that the minister recognizes is their influence, right? This is the same thing that the enemy recognizes. He recognizes their influence as well. So I would say that we would we would want to begin to say that, you know, these rappers that we hear are sellouts, right? Because they promote a lifestyle in a culture that is self-destructive. But once again, we have to remember that they're being, many of them are not conscious, you know what I'm saying? Then they don't have that knowledge of self. So they're being manipulated. Many of them are being manipulated. Now, I would say that where you come into a person being a sellout is when they know, is when they know, and they continue to make money off of the suffering of their people. That's what I would call a sellout, right? It's when you know, and not just know, but literally you're making enough money that
Right.
you could use that money to invest in something that is
Productive, life-giving,
more productive,
progressive.
right?
Absolutely.
I mean, because today there's many ways that you can make money without, you know, selling out your people.
Right.
So I
Throwing the
would
people
think
in the
that,
bus.
you know, some of these artists, you know, they're so talented, you know, and they have a lot of money, and they just continue to put out, you know, ratchet type of music.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about that is that you and I know that, you know, we reap what we sow.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, you would think that it would be difficult to go to bed at night,
Right. Right.
you know,
Right.
watching the news and
Right.
seeing, you know, young men gunning other young men down. And you know that a lot of what we see young people doing today, with, for instance, when you see young people and they're taking their cars and they're doing donuts in the middle of the street, it's just coming straight from a movie. Why would you even do that? Where do you even see any people doing that except for our people who are, you know, influenced by what they see on the TV screen? It's not real, but
Right.
they make it as though it's the exciting, you know, it's exciting, you know. But the problem is that in the holy Quran, it says that Satan makes evil fair seeming. He makes he makes all of that stuff that he does in his movie, he makes it seems like it's so exciting. He makes it seem like, you know, when you do this, you get, you know, you get the women, you get the money, you can even get the infamy, right? But what he don't tell you is that this is what Jesus said. He said, take hit on his yoke, right? Because his yoke is light, right? This is what the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad talked about. You know, when you take on the path of righteousness, that path seems as though it is restrictive. But look at the path of wickedness, right? So now you're a drug dealer, but you got to look over your back every day.
Right.
Now you doing donuts in the street, but you lose control and you run over an innocent bystander, you know, because we're all standing around, you know. So the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan says that we can't break the law, that the law will break us, right? There's no way that we can break the law. We seem like we're breaking the law,
Right.
but the further we get into what we're doing, eventually we have to reap what we've sown, right?
Right.
And if you put into life negative energy,
That's what
the
you're going to
only
get
thing
back.
that you're going to
Absolutely.
get out of life is negative energy. That's the only thing that
Right.
you're going to get out of life. So that's what I, you know, that's what I would say as far as that's concerned.
Absolutely. Brother Mar, the
Yeah.
Machine states Arrested Development, Juggernauts, Public Enemy, X Clan, Black Eyed Peas, ATCQ, Main Source, Black Star, Digital Planets. We don't have conscious hip hop groups like these anymore. Absolutely. And so, you, Brother Steve, I share with you, I grew up in a devoutly Pentecostal household.
Right.
So my parents were like, anything other than gospel music is, in Islam, they say haram, right? So they would say it's
Right.
evil, right? Secular
Right.
music
Right.
is the devil.
Yeah.
And so, only thing I could listen to, or even try to influence my parents and I would listen to, were these type of what? Positive, conscious hip hop groups. And we're not saying that all hip hop has to be conscious, right? We understand there are different genres, but when the overwhelming majority is full of this type of negative, right? Some people talk about, we can even, shift a little bit so we can see the connection with reality TV shows.
Mm-hmm.
We know these shows aren't reality, they're scripted, right?
Right.
They got writers and everything, right? However, they sell it as if it's real. And I always tell young people when I go and speak, on reality TV show, you have three main things. Say, what is that, Brother Lumumba? I said, I'm gonna let you know. Dysfunctional behavior, hypersexuality, violence.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you're watching Flip That House,
right?
That's what you're going to get.
Yeah.
And people are watching this, eating it up, and now we're seeing our people emulating this behavior in real life. Mm-hmm. Somebody gets mad, they're throwing a drink at the person. Well, I mean, people weren't doing that 10, 15 years ago, right? And so we are part of that is, and we're going to get to this next, and about two questions is the parents allowing the television to raise the children.
Right. And let me say something.
Go ahead.
If I can real quick. Can you put his statement back up there?
Yes.
Okay, so I definitely agree with what my brother is saying, right? And it says, now he says that we don't have conscious hip hop groups like these anymore. Now that's the only exception. And I totally understand what he's saying, right? The only exception is that we do have hip hop groups like this. However, we don't control the air. We don't control the radio stations that allow these type of groups to get airplay. Right. You see what I'm saying? That's the key. So you just mentioned some of the TV shows, right? Mm-hmm. We have conscious TV shows, but guess what they play? Love and Hip Hop. Mm-hmm. What's the other one? That's Ratchet. Right. All of them. Look at all the programs that they allow to go out that's so ratchet, right?
Right.
We as Black people, I think that we need to understand that we are the enemy in white America.
Absolutely.
That we are the enemy, and that we're under what's called psyops. We are under mind wars. There's so many different names for it. We are under social engineering.
Yes.
This white man don't have no love for the Black man.
Well, I gotta disagree with you very quickly there, Brother Steve.
Okay.
You said the white man. So I'm gonna do like you did, Brother Martin Machine. This is just a white man. It's the white man and his wife. Okay, so I mean, we can't leave her out. You know, she's part of it too.
You really can't leave her out. You really can't leave her out because even during slavery, some of the horrific tales of slavery had to deal with the white woman.
Yeah,
had to deal with the white woman taking the Black woman's baby, taking it down to the swamps and throwing it to the alligators because of the white man's coming in and raping our women.
Right.
So once that white woman found out that white man was in the Black cabins, right? She treated certain slaves brutally.
Absolutely.
Not to mention the rejection that she got from some certain Black males, right? And when she would get that rejection, she would, cause that Black man to either be tarred and feathered or ripped limb from limb. Mm-hmm. So no, we can't allow Heather or Karen or Mary Sue. We can't allow none of them to be off the hook. Absolutely. When it comes down to the condition that we're in. We see, I mean, man, I mean, we see it on these TikTok videos and things like that, where these white women are walking these dogs, and then they all of a sudden call the police, fabricate a situation that could cause the life of a young black man. They don't care. They don't care. So no, we can't let her off the hook at all. Now, are there some white people who are good, who are striving to stand up for justice? And we have to say that yes, there are. I know some, and we know a few, but they are one finger on a hand, if that. You know what I'm saying? If that. It's like what Muhammad Ali said. He talked about, if you see a bunch of snakes heading towards your door, you're not gonna try to figure out which snake is not venomous. You're gonna, the wisest thing for you to do is to close the door and not let any of them in. Absolutely. And that's what we have to honestly do. And this is not a racist statement, but this is a statement that I think that any intelligent white man and white woman can understand, is that we're now 400 plus years into our sojourn in the hills of North America. And we haven't seen 1 year, we haven't seen 1 month, we haven't seen 1 day, we haven't seen 1 hour where we are treated as subhuman in white America. And now to see what they're doing over in Palestine with close to 35,000, mostly women and children, being genocide, being massacred.
Right.
And you see the mainstream media, the mainstream media still will not call it genocide.
Right.
The mainstream media is even demonizing young college students who want to see it end to the bloodshed. That's all they're calling for.
Right.
A divestment in the machinery that's causing people to be buried under buildings alive. What's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
So yeah, I'm sorry. Let's go on, because that's getting off.
This is the world where we live in. So let me ask you this question, and this is, I think, very important, because we can pontificate all day about the issue. Right. How do we combat the hip hop to prison pipeline, the music of mass incarceration?
Man, of course, I have to go straight to the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, as taught by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. We have to first begin with the knowledge of self, a knowledge of God, and a knowledge of our enemy. You know what I mean? There are 6. We're taught that we must accept our own and be ourselves, right? And as I always say, quoting Mao and quoting the late great Dr. Khalid Muhammad, if we don't start anywhere, we should start with rejecting what the enemy supports and support what the enemy rejects. I think it's pretty clear today that if we start off just rejecting what Western culture tries to put in our face and support everything that Western culture rejects, then we'll be on the right path. Because Western culture tries to push this gender fluidity, right? It tries to push that our children have the right to mutilate their bodies. No, we reject that, right? We reject that. It tries to push that we'll create a site where you can sell your own body. You don't have a pimp now. You're your own pimp.
Right.
We reject that. We reject that. Because look at Western society right now. It's not just the Black family that's in disarray.
Right.
It's the white family that's in disarray.
Influx, yes, absolutely.
And let me tell you this, that the real fear is the multiplication of the black man and the multiplication of African and Muslim nations. You want to know why? Because they don't hold the same Western values that Western white society does. They don't even eat the same food that Western white society does. A food that has in it chemicals that disrupt the reproductive organ. So you have over you have here in America where you have a high rate of maternal and infant mortality and impotency because of the food. Now you have young men in their 40s and 30s taking Viagra, right?
Right.
And this is all because of the chemicals that are not just in the food, but they're in the water. They're even in the plastics that the food is contained in. And if those listeners want to know, just look up what's called bisphenol A, look up phthalates, look up these type of what's called hormone inhibitors, right? And so, yeah, if we just start off right there, and once again, when we embrace what the enemy rejects, I say that look at what they reject most of all, and that is the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I just want to bring this up, right? So every Black history, they will talk about mostly all Black leaders, but there's one Black leader that they never want you to know about. Well, more than one, right? But mainly it's the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. It is Marcus Garvey. How can you leave out the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Marcus Garvey from Black history?
Martin Delany.
Martin Delany. All of those advocated what? Separation and the doing for self, right? And so what they do is when they do get a hold of these Black leaders, and we see that we're looking at them, they put a tagline on them. So with Martin Luther King, who at the end near the end of his life was, man, Martin was powerful, right? But they want to put the label on him, I have a dream. I have a dream? So
right. He actually woke up and he said that what? He was integrating his people into a burning house.
Into a burning house, right? Same thing with Malcolm, by any means necessary. They just want to capture him with that one phrase right there. So yeah, we want to reject, what he supports and support what he rejects, and we'll be starting off on a good path right there.
But Brother Martyr Machine says starts in the home, that's the foundation. I would agree. We know the African proverb states what the ruin of a nation begins in the homes of its people, right? And when I have these conversations, sometimes I get a bit animated, right? When people complain about the TV shows or the schools, and I said, there's enough critique to go around. However, I always say the school doesn't dictate to your child what the values of the household is, right? I said, irrespective of what they're teaching, you should be teaching your child in the home. I said, this isn't theoretical. I have children. I've been doing this for 16 plus years. I don't care what they say. This is what I say. And how we grew up, what your parents say is what? Law, right? Oh, the TV shows are promoting da-da-da-da-da-da. You don't have to watch them. You vote with your eyes. You know what? My daughter will tell you, we watch Jeopardy every night. She may not like it, right? But we're watching Jeopardy every night, right? So we're promoting a culture of intelligentsia, a culture of education, right? So this is in the home because you can't control what they do, but we can control what we do.
That's right.
Right? And I think this is something that is extremely important when we talk about combating the hip hop to prison pipeline and the music of mass incarceration. I know you've done some prison ministry work, Brother Steve. I've done some prison ministry work. I wouldn't call it ministry because I'm not religious, but you get what I'm saying. And when you go in and talk to some of the brothers, some of them are in there because they were trying to live out rap lyrics. Literally, not figuratively, not theoretically. This isn't based on circumstance or conjecture. They asked us, well, yeah, well, such and such said this. And so I was trying to wow. And we know, and this comes to the last question, most of those brothers, unfortunately, I think one number stated about 82% of young men and women who were incarcerated, who were ensnared by the carceral state, did not have their father, not mom's boo thing, their biological parent, father in the home. And so the last question I have for you, Brother Steve, is what role does the black man play in combating the hip hop to prison pipeline? What role does the black man play in combating the hip hop to prison pipeline? New Kennedy, what's going on?
So I definitely agree with what the brother was saying about the family, being the foundation. The family is the basic unit of a nation, and if you can destroy the family, you can destroy the nation.
And if I can, real quick, Brother Steve, you talked about reject what they promote, embrace what they reject. One of the things that the dominant society promotes is not having families.
Right.
So you think about that. They promote not having families. You don't need to get married. You can just have children or what. This is something that they promote. And we know that by every metric, children who grow up without a father in the home, high likelihood to have what? Low self-esteem, have behavioral issues, developmental problems, right? Become sexually promiscuous, become purveyors and users of drugs and alcohol, become having contact with the criminal justice system. All of these numbers go up exponentially when there's a lack of a family unit. So once again, you have to ask the question. Once again, and as you stated, if they're promoting this, we should reject it.
We should reject it. Now the problem is, so here's the problem, right? So the problem is that slavery, the whole objective, we just talked about the Willie Lynch syndrome, right? The whole objective of slavery was to the destruction of the black family. That was the whole objective of slavery. So think about a people putting together a system that is designed to destroy the family unit of another people. Think about that. Think about the fact that the family was the first institution that God put in place, the family. And then think about a people who design a system whose whole intent is to destroy that unit that God founded in the beginning. What do you call a people like that? So now the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said that a man who controls the diameter of your teaching controls the circumference of your activity, right? So in other words, you only do what you know,
right?
To put it real simple.
And that goes to Dr. Carter G. Woodson. Yeah. Right? Miseducation of the Negro. If you control a man's thinking, you don't have to tell him to go here or there. He would go there without being told. And if he would go to the back door. And if there isn't a back door, he said what? He will build one. Why? Because education makes it necessary.
And think about once again the message that we're getting over the TV, the message that we're getting in the rap, that young people are raised up on. So we can't even talk about, the family being the basic unit because there is no family. They've destroyed the family. And so, and they control the diameter of our knowledge, right? And so when we look, for instance, even, this is why I say it's mind war, psychological warfare, right? It's social engineering, because even when we look subconsciously, if we don't even pay attention and we're just looking at television, for instance, and we see a commercial, tell me how many commercials that you've seen where you see a strong black family in the commercial. Usually it's a white man and a black woman. Right. Or now it's even a gay black man with a white man. It's gone all the way off the hill, right? So I think once again, what we have to begin to do is we have to begin to gain that knowledge of self. And once again, when we look, for instance, and I can speak it from the Nation of Islam point of view, because that's where I'm coming from, right? So when we look at the Nation of Islam, or when we look at any strong Black organization, right, it has a culture that is almost diametrically opposite of the broader culture, right? So when we look at the Nation of Islam, the culture is, we don't eat the same food that the Western culture eats. We one of the things that we do as far as family is concerned is we go back to the system of courting, right? Of courting and not dating, because one of the things when you date and you see that fine looking woman and that woman sees that handsome looking man, and we don't have the knowledge of or the science of chemistry, right? Chemistry says that if you have a fine looking woman in front of you and she has a good looking man in front of her and ain't nobody around, and we got chemistry, we gonna get it on.
Right.
What happens is that we then become blinded by the behavior of the other individual that we become aware of, like 3 months in, right? Instead of courting the person and finding out what they like and what they don't like, we find out 3 months in and we're connected already, and now we're clashing, right?
Right.
So we have to begin family on a more intelligent basis, and we can't begin our family with Western behaviors. We can't do it. When I say reject what they support, I mean everything. Everything that we think is right is wrong. Everything that we think is right is wrong. There's a there's a scripture in the Bible that says there is a way that seemeth right. It seems right, but it says it's the ends thereof. It says there's a way that seemeth right, but the ends thereof is the way of death. Right? Now, link this to this other scripture that talks about the pale horse, right? So you have a black horse, a red horse, and all that, but you have a pale horse. Now, what is a pale horse? Is that a sick horse? No, the Native American called the white man pale face, right? So you have a pale horse, and the pale horse, the rider of the pale horse is death, and hell follows closely behind, right? Now, think about this. So the rider is death. Death what? Death of your culture, right? Death of your way of life. And when he kills your culture and your way of life, and you then embrace his culture and his way of life, you get domestic violence, you get alcoholism, you get drug addiction. And check this out, my brother. If you go over there to Australia with the Aborigines, you got alcohol abuse, you got domestic violence. That's because of white supremacy. If you go on the Native American reservations, you got domestic violence, you got alcohol abuse. So, like Dr. Amos Wilson said, the problem is, what did he say? The problem is the system in essence, right? The problem is the architecture of white supremacy. And white supremacy is Zionism. White supremacy is Nazism. Don't even get it confused. They're all the same. They all hate Black people. They all hate darker people. They hate us the most, right?
Right.
Because we have the genetic ability to annihilate them. That's why they lynch Black men. You know what I'm saying? Because when we drop a seed into their women, then it's going to produce black, because black is dominant and white is recessive, right? And they see their population decreasing. They see a birth dearth where they're no longer able to reproduce in a way that will replenish their people. And so, yeah, so this is really what the rap is all about. And I say that there is conscious rap out there, but we have to be able to control, you know, and you see P. Diddy coming under all of this trouble, just like Cosby. You know, anytime you see any black man who wants to begin to control a media outlet, you know, Alan, what's that? Alan, there's a brother named Alan, forget his name. I think he controls the Weather Channel or something like that. Mm-hmm. He's trying to buy a station. They've been blocking him for years from buying a TV station. Right. So yeah, we have to control the distribution. That's what I meant. Distribution.
So, family, I appreciate you all watching. I'm going to put the link in the chat. I repeat, the link is now in the chat. Tap in, be part of the conversation. We're discussing combating the hip hop to prison pipeline, the music of mass incarceration. New Kemet TV, definitely want to hear from you, Mar the Machine. We know, we got to talk because, the fight was this weekend. Brother Sandman, love to hear from you as well. Once again, combating the hip hop to prison pipeline, the music of mass incarceration. My position, I agree with Brother Mar the Machine, is that it starts in the home. The foundation is in the home. And one of the biggest things you could do, and this is my opinion, speaking as a parent, is you need to have conversations with your children, right? You need to talk with them. Hey, what are they saying? We need to unpack this. You need to look at, is it having an influence on your child? We know young people are extremely, I would just use the term, not easy to manipulate, but
impressionable.
Impressionable, absolutely. Extremely impressionable. Yeah. So we need to have those conversations. Speaking of impressionable, I remember several years ago, I was at a Black male conference being hosted by a prestigious university. I just call it State U, Big State U, right? Brother got up there, started talking about how Black masculinity and Black fatherhood was a cesspool of negative behaviors, right? Violence and control. And I said, brother, I said, hold on. I said, time out. Stop the presses. I said, are you a father? No, I'm not. Do you want to be a father? Absolutely not. Did you grow up with a father? No, I didn't. So how can you comment on something like this? Right. And so then the brother was saying that the problem in the Black community was that Black men had adopted the ideology of the oppressor. Mm-hmm. I said, okay, you might be onto something. He said, and that's patriarchy. And that what we should do is adopt our idea and philosophy of feminism. I said, hold up, time out once again. I said, I pulled a Chris Webber, right? Called a timeout, didn't even have one, right? I said, brother, you do know that traditional African culture, independent of European Arab influence, was patriarchal. I said, you do know that feminism was created by Westerners. I said, what the French toast are we talking about here? And the middle young man said, brother, I'm glad you said something, because I was looking like, I know that don't add up. That don't even make sense. Mm-hmm. This is why we have to be in spaces where we're combating these unhealthy ideas. I did a show 2 nights ago on, is sexism Pan-Africanism's Achilles heel? Mm-hmm. Now, had the brother come on, and brother was like, we know the history. We don't find any of that in the movement. Dating back to the Haitian Revolution, where it was Bookman and another queen mother sister, who took part in that voodoo incantation, and then went out and said, let's kick Napoleon's derriere. Right? So we find this throughout the movement. And so the argument that I made was, where's this coming from? Academia. Mm-hmm. Right? And so what we find is there's a push, whatever we're doing that's positive, the goal is to what? Demonize it. Right. Mm-hmm. And then we said, well, if Black men didn't take the lead and say, hey, we're going to be men, as Yah Santawa implored us to do before the war, the golden stool. She said, hey, you all are being men. You gonna let them come in and take over? What good are y'all for? And she was 60 years old and said, I'm about the life. I'm going to spin the block for my people. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So what would happen if we didn't do that? We'd be saying, we don't protect Black women. We aren't real men. We're sassy. So I said, when you look at these alien ideologies, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You're damned if you do, damned if you don't. So I said, you might as well be yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Your unapologetic African self. Very quickly, Brother Martin Machine says, you know it's bad when Sexy Red is invited to speak to our youth in the Black community. Wow.
Right. Right.
I wasn't aware of that, but I be having people telling me stuff. I don't follow her, but right. And this is something I argue that they're marketing this type of behavior to children. And we know the outcomes of behaving this way aren't positive. They're negative.
Right.
Right. I remember I had a conversation with one of my students, and we were talking about this very issue. Matter of fact, we were having a conversation about ratchet feminism. I did a show on ratchet feminism probably about a year and a half ago. I think I'll do a part 2, ratchet feminism. And ratchet feminists, they engage in, they promote disrespectability politics. So one of the things ratchet feminists do is they go around promoting being disrespectful to people, being cantankerous, being contentious, and being sexually lascivious. So I asked the students, I said, well, is this behavior empowering or not? Black young lady said, well, you know, all of my friends behave that way, and I like hanging out with people who act that way. I said, that's cool. I'm not going to play the morality police, tell you what's right or wrong. I said, but the question is, when your friends behave that way, are their outcomes positive or negative? She said negative. So I said, so then why would you engage in that behavior and associate with people who behave that way? Makes no sense whatsoever. We talk about social engineering. I go a step further and argue that it's menticide.
Absolutely.
We are being programmed to destroy ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is.
That's what it is.
Some positive artists are Golden Child, Richard Raw, Sarak, B. The God, Naruba. So very good. So mention some of these positive artists. Very good. Hopefully I can reach out to them and get them on the show and their music. Right? Because we always have an alternative. One of the things that Elijah stated that I agree with was that if you're going to tell Black people to not emulate whites, not to follow whites, you must give them a alternative.
Absolutely.
So some of the music that East Shore ENT has shared with us, some of the artists, but an alternative to the racially disempowering, self-destructive, and self-defeating music that seeks to, of course, indoctrinate our children, our young people, to destroy themselves, their lives, and their very essence of being. New Kemet TV, reestablishing the rite of passage for our youth is important. We also have to promote positive hip-hop with our platforms. Absolutely, 100%. Once again, family, the link is in the chat. The link is in the description. Tap in and be part of the conversation where we're discussing combating the hip-hop to prison pipeline, the music of mass incarceration. Once again, mass incarceration. We know that Black people in America, African people in America, we make up 12 to 13% of the American population, but we make up upwards of 60% of all those who are incarcerated. So we know there are some problems in the community. And I would argue that one of those problems is we aren't raising our children. Right. We have people who sometimes are afraid of their children. How did it get like? I had a sister actually tell me the other day how her nephew was disrespecting her sister, his mother, and engaging in behavior that was so untoward. I can't even mention it on the line, on the air.
Right.
And she said, well, brother, I want to know if you could go talk to him. I said, I would love to, but I said, I think this issue is too far gone. She said, why? I said, the child is behaving in a manner you shared. The child doesn't respect the parent at all. So there's no way they will listen to me. Who are you? I don't even know you, right? I said, so we have to also make sure that we're modeling the proper behavior, right? Dr. Joanna Kunjufu stated years ago, children are actors. They act out what they see in the home. One of the things I would always do with my children, particularly when they were young, the teenagers now, they don't want to talk to me, but when they were younger, they would talk to me, right? That was great. Now they think I'm a jerk because you always tell us what to do. My children would do something wrong. We know children are rambunctious, particularly when they're very young. And I would add, they would do, I said, did you see me do this? Right? They say, no. I said, okay, so I'm off the hook. Now I can get on you, right? But there was one time my son was with me, and Brother Steve knows my son. We were somewhere. Matter of fact, we were at Sweet Dots when Sweet Dots was still in the Wright Dunbar district. They had some event, and I was playfully being flippant about my age. About a week later, we're somewhere else. you know, my son has always been tall for his age. He was
Right.
telling people he was 9 when he was actually 6. I got wind of it and I said, oh, that's on me. He saw me doing that.
Right.
And so that's why he's doing it. So I can't jump down his throat when he's emulating my behavior. So I said, son, you know what? I was joking when I did that. I said, a bad example. Let's not lie about our age.
Yeah. Now, I just wanted to say that New Kemet is touching on something right there, though, right? So New Kemet TV is talking about reestablishing the rites of passage. You know, one of the things that has to be reestablished, period, is our own culture, right? Right now, what we're living in is an alien culture. It's an alien culture, and we're like freshwater fish swimming in salt water. The white man, he swims in the salt water. We're freshwater, and we suffocate in salt water. That's why we always say that we can't breathe. Literally, we can't breathe because we're suffocating in a toxic culture called Western culture. So the rites of passage, what was the rites of passage, right? It was bringing a young man through a series of steps to help him to understand his role as a man towards not only a woman, but his community.
That's right. And the same was for the woman as well.
Same as for the woman as well, right?
In fact, I got a book right here on it, Gender Training in Ghana. Let's go. Let's go. So this is a hyperbole, family. There's scholarship to substantiate what Brother Steve is saying.
Yeah. And so right now, think about it. Without the rites of passage, how do we as men know that we are? How do we know that we're a man opposed to just being a male? Right?
Well, you know, society says that you should just let them pick and choose. The young people pick and choose. Right? And we know when we lead ourselves, particularly when you're a young person, what happens? I mean, I'm 40 and I still lean on my elders, my older brothers for wisdom and advice. How should I handle a situation? That's what a community is for. So you don't have to act alone.
That's right. That's right. And you know, we have that word community even, right? What is community? Community is simply common unity, right? We have what we have in common. What do we have in common? The basic denominator of what we all have in common is what we say is the first law of nature, which is self-preservation. How do you self-preservate yourself as a community? You look out for the children. You build a base, a foundation for the children so that they have a springboard to go off on. But have we done that as a Black community? No, because we continue to tell our children, go get a job, right? Today, we should be teaching every child how to be an entrepreneur because we have technology that will allow them to bypass certain gatekeepers, you know what I mean? And be an entrepreneur, do their thing. I mean, for instance, really, you know, if you're self-disciplined, and I know that I'm not sure how you feel, but I know if you're self-disciplined, there's almost enough knowledge on the web that if you know what to go and look at, they got so many tutorials and educational videos that you can almost teach yourself.
This is very true. Very true. As a matter of fact, that's something that Dr. Carter G. Woodson, shout out to Dr. Carter G. Woodson, the father of Black history, states in his book, Miseducation of the Negro, written in 1933. And, you know, if you read it today, you think he wrote it yesterday.
Right.
That's not, so the issues you see haven't changed, literally, not figuratively, literally. Right. But he talks about in the book that for Black people to move forward, we must become autodidactic. That means self-taught.
Absolutely. Because his teaching is nothing but training. It's not teaching at all. Because, you know, when you have education brings out of you what God put in you, right? Training only teaches you how to fit into a certain slot in society. You know what I mean? So many of us, for instance, what we don't even think outside the box, right? Those people who think outside the box are usually seen as weird or crazy or conspiracy theorists, right? So, for instance, thinking outside the box, right? So you have an election that's coming up, and you have a Republican and a Democrat. One on one side, the individual supports genocide. On another side, the individual supports white supremacy.
Right.
So as a Black person, are you able to think outside the box? Or do you think that you should vote for genocide, or should you vote for white supremacy? Which one am I going to vote for? I don't know. Why don't you think outside the box and vote for a third party? Oh no, because if I vote for a third party candidate, then I'll be giving the vote away, and the person that I don't like will win. Not if the whole community does it.
Right.
Common unity. What is common unity? It's survival.
And if I could, we have a good example of that in the city of Dayton, right? You're familiar with the sister who created Neighbors Over Politics, that organization, right?
Yeah.
She ran third party. We know most cities, urban cities, are what? Democrat.
Right.
Sister said, I'm not a Republican. I know what they're about. They ain't no fan of ours. She said, I know the Democratic Party is no fan of ours, because look at what has happened in the city the past 40 plus years. She ran the first time independent, third party. She didn't make it. She ran the second time, 8 years later, independent, didn't make it. Her third time, family, in our hometown, she ran as an independent candidate. She won the election, the candidacy for a city commission. So when we bring it up, when we're talking about these things, this isn't just us theorizing. We're talking about tangible results. And so now when they try to push some legislation and say, oh, we're going to have this individual purchase this building, this lot of land, she says, no. Her and Fairchild say, no. We need to actually look at this. The bylaws say we need to read this out to the community and have them comment. That's what we're going to do.
Right.
So we have to have politicians that, quite frankly, refuse to sell us out.
And once again, if the mainstream media is pushing this candidate, reject that candidate. They don't even show third party candidates.
Right.
So another part of Western society is not only do they lie, right, but they hide the truth so that you don't even know that there's another alternative, right? So they hide the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. They hide the 10-point program of the new Black Panther Party. They hide, you know what I'm saying? They hide, our culture from us. They hide our people from us.
Absolutely. Dr. Jawan.
Go ahead.
Dr. Jawan Kanjufu in his book, Lessons from History, A Celebration in Blackness. I actually have a picture of my son when he was younger, where he's smiling, holding the book. He talked about that very issue. He said that Black people that advocated for what? Black nationalism, embracing their cultural identity as African people. He said you don't tend to learn about them in history. They only learn about people who are able to be molded as someone who was willing to compromise with the white power structure. And I even talk about anti-Blackness in this ubiquitous. So I say, it ain't just white folk, even non-Black people of color are anti-Black. And we're going to actually do a show on that in a couple of weeks. So the ubiquitous nature of anti-Blackness, what does that look like? What are some of the origins of anti-Blackness? So make sure you all tune into that. But this is something that we need to be cognizant of, particularly when we talk about countering the mass incarceration issue in our community. Mr. Sandman, what's the word? Shout out to the Illidale.
Hey, shout out. What's going on, yo?
All right, brother.
Yeah.
Doing quite all right. I'm sorry, Philadelphia's 215, right? Area code?
Yeah, we have a 215 and a 267.
Okay, very good. All right.
Yep.
What you got for me?
Yeah, so this topic of the music to prison pipeline, I think is an interesting topic to me, because I've had a generation of a family that's been in the music business, and I was even in it a little bit myself. But yeah, so I had to push back on it a little bit because I feel that um, it's not a music to prison pipeline. It's I think the pipeline to prison is. I think the music that we hear today is a result of the prison pipeline, as opposed to the music causing the prison pipeline. So, we have to keep in mind, like, where we coming from here in the United States as African Americans. So, all right, so originally, I mean, we came over here on slave boats and we got stripped of our original indigenous African culture. And then once they stripped us of our original indigenous African heritage and culture, we only thing that we could identify with is slavery.
Well,
We had that.
real quick, Brother Sandman. That was part of the process of dis-Africanization, but they were not wholly and completely successful. There's a lot of extant literature on African cultural retention and African American culture. But I get what you're saying there.
Yeah, I know what you talk about, like the Gullah Geechee in South Carolina. Yeah, I actually have a family that's from South Carolina, and I'm probably related to some Gullah Geechee as well. But like, yeah, I know there's some retention, but that was basically it's kind of like when you go into basic training into the military. They try to indoctrinate you into the military way of lifestyle, so they have to change you. Yeah, they have to break you, so to speak,
This
in
is
basic
true.
training
This is true because I was in
from
the
being a
military.
civilian.
This is true. I was
Yeah,
in the
me too.
military, and I remember I was in boot camp, and I was like, man, this is indoctrination. Like, what the man? I ain't about to go, you know what I mean, kamikaze for y'all.
Mhm.
Absolutely, go right ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's kind of similar what happened to us in our culture. You know what I'm saying? When you go into basic training, you don't forget everything about what it's like to be a civilian. They can't get rid of all of it, but they try to suck all of the civilian out of you and turn you into this machine, this soldier machine. And that's similar to what happened to us. When they had to indoctrinate us into this European culture. So, but it was a subservient European culture that they indoctrinated us into to be their servants. So once we got our freedom, right, what did we have to identify ourselves with? We had to like try to like build some type of identity because we didn't have the retention of our original indigenous African culture, and then we were brutalized with the slavery culture for centuries, and then we tried to identify ourselves, and then once we started to like try to emulate European culture, like free men, white culture. We tried to emulate that the best as we could, but then as that's how we started to accept Christianity and all the other parts of European culture. And here in America, we started to assimilate to that, and we were having some success with it, you know. But then when the family fell apart, you know, um, the man left the house, and then that's when we started seeing the downfall of the African American family. Once the downfall of the African American family started to happen, then that's when we started to see this explicit degenerate music that we're starting to hear. Because I mean, the fact of the matter is, just because someone might live in a degenerate community or is live a degenerate lifestyle doesn't mean that that person doesn't still have the talent that he was born with. Just because he's from the ghetto doesn't mean he's still not
Right.
a brilliant young man. He's just utilizing his artistic brilliance for to do something degenerate. So
And let me veg you back off of one thing that you were saying, for the Sandman, because yeah, you make up some really good points. So I don't know if you had tuned in a little earlier, how I was saying how they replace conscious rap with gangster rap, and how they replace the civil rights movement or the conscious movement with black exploitation movies, right? Well, they did the same thing in religion, right? So you had made up a point about us adopting their Christianity and how it kind of worked for us for a little bit. But check it out. When we adopted their form of Christianity, we were talking about liberation theology, right? And so what they did was they replaced liberation theology with, what do they call it today? They call it it's more of a financial type of lift
You're talking
yourself
about
up.
the prosperity gospel.
Prosperity gospel. That's
Right.
it. So we
instead of trying to
remove
get
liberation.
free, you're trying to get rich.
Exactly. In a capitalistic culture. And for me, capitalism, Christianity, and Western culture, they all fall under the architecture of white supremacy. And that's not saying that Christianity, not what Jesus taught. I'm talking about what they taught. You know what I'm saying? With the white Jesus, the white Mary, the white angels, the white Moses. You know what I mean? And they all in Africa. So I hope I didn't what the Sandman was saying was pretty powerful and on point. So if you want, I'll go on and say just a little bit more. This whole thing about the prison industrial pipeline, right? The truth being is that we're all prisoners. Some of us are behind bars and some of us are outside walking around free. But in truth, we're all prisoners, because slavery in America never ended. It just morphed. It morphed into a number of different forms. You had the chain gangs, you had just a number of different, you had sharecropping, you just had just a number of different forms. And the latest iteration, you could say, is the prison industrial complex. But I would say the latest iteration is what you call wage slaves. We're all wage slaves, which means that during chattel slavery, the slave master had to pay for the food, the housing, and the clothing of the slave. Today, he's mastered slavery to now where the slave has to pay for their own food, their own clothing, and their own shelter. And you don't have any money, any spare money to actually live a life. You have slave wages just to survive. This is pitiful. We need to separate, and we need to separate immediately. But you all go ahead. Let me see.
For the Sandman, go right ahead. For the Sandman, can you hear us? Can you hear me?
Well, all right then.
All right. Oh yes, I think Brother Sandman is having some technical difficulties. That's quite all right.
Okay.
Jewel says, "Oh no, Christianity watch the 7-part whited out documented by Watchman Reports." So Jewel, you could tap in, be part of the conversation. Definitely want to get your perspectives on that. But we want to make sure we also stay online, on course here, and we're talking about combating the hip hop to prison pipeline, the music of mass incarceration. I would say from some of the work that I've done with brothers and sisters who have been incarcerated is there's oftentimes a lack of literacy. Mm-hmm. Right? We all know that during the Holocaust of enslavement, particularly, and this isn't hyperbole here, this is a conjecture. One of the arguments that people make is that when you get these black activists, these Afrocentrics, these Pan-Africanists, they're falsifying history. They're making ahistorical claims, right? They're pseudo-intellectuals. So I'm gonna give you all some history that is verifiable. So oftentimes when we talk to brothers and sisters, there's a conversation regarding that during the Holocaust of enslavement, that reading was forbidden, right? And this came after the Stono Rebellion in South Carolina at 1739. I've always told people that after real or perceived black progress in America, we can even argue throughout the world, is followed by periods of racial retrenchment. And after the Stono Rebellion, retrenchment laws were created. And part of those retrenchment laws were the outlaw reading. When I would go into the jails and speak with brothers and sisters, but particularly brothers, the lack of literacy was appalling, right? And so I've always told even my students, people who are intellectually lazy, intellectually indolent, intellectually disabled are easily manipulated. And unfortunately, we typically are manipulated against into working against our own best interest. But
Hello,
to
can you
say,
hear me?
go right ahead. Yes,
Yeah.
it's fine.
Yeah, I'm back now. Okay, cool. Yeah, so what I was going to say is the reason why I say that it's not, the music that caused the prison pipeline. I think it was the result of the prison pipeline that caused the music. So, like you had already iterated earlier, that a family without a father in a household, the chance of the child getting caught up in delinquency or degenerate behavior, rises exponentially. And that goes for any group. It doesn't matter if you're black, white, or Asian or whatever. If the father isn't in a home, there's a likelihood that the child is going to be raised or educated by the street culture. So what had happened was, once the black family started to break up, and there wasn't a father in the home. Now we got these young men who are influenced by um, 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 the degenerate behavior in the streets, and they're also getting raised by the music that they hearing in the on the radio. So it's just like a never-ending cycle. So it's they're there's no father in the house, and then they're influenced by the street life, and they're also influenced by the degenerate music, and the cycle just keeps continuing. Now the
I,
next generation happens.
I, I think that's a great point, Brother Sandman, because when you talk about gangs, when you talk about why young people join gangs, the studies show, the research shows, case studies show, gangs are what surrogate family, right? That's
Absolutely.
why many young people join gangs. And so if you don't have that strong male leadership in the home, at some point that young man, typically when they get about 12 or 13, some ages even 10 or 11, are bigger than their mother, right? And so it's hard to corral that behavior and keep them in line, right? So I think you're making a great point there. Many people would argue that this is a black masculinist perspective of how to solve problems. But as I said before on the previous show, when black men don't take the lead, don't take the initiative, we're told that we're less than men, right? And so once again, I've always advocated for our brothers and our sisters, listen, you're gonna have to be unapologetically African if we're gonna solve these problems. And in doing so, we understand that we work in tandem together. We did so on the continent. We did so during the March to the Pair of Cones. We did so during the Middle Passage. We did so during the death, decadence, and dysphoria of the Holocaust of enslavement in the Western Hemisphere. So there's no need for us to stop doing it now.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So yeah, we just got to be extra strong. Like if we made it through that middle passage, and we overcame that trial, that it's obvious that we're some of the strongest human beings on the planet Earth. Just genetically, if we are the descendants of the strongest of us that made it. So yeah,
Absolutely.
we just got to keep overcoming. And eventually we'll get this figured out. You know what I mean? Because most groups, if they had to go endure what we endured, they probably would have wouldn't have made it, because you see what happened to the Native Indians. The white
Right.
man practically wiped them out. He and the only reason why he brought us over here is because the Indian couldn't handle the harshness, or coming in contact with the white man's diseases, and he couldn't handle um, the labor. So,
Mhm.
and the white man couldn't handle the labor either, and he was also susceptible to diseases. So we were the only humans on the planet that could endure what we endured for all those centuries. And we're here, and we're still fighting. We just got to overcome this latest trial that we're going through. But it's a simple fix. We got to fix the family first, and then everything will get situated. Because whenever
Absolutely.
you get a young man, and he doesn't have that, his father in his life, he's definitely most likely he's going to rebel. He's going to have like this deep emptiness in himself, and he's probably not even going to really care about life so much. He's probably just going to just vibe out basically, and anything goes.
Yeah.
Okay, so
That's dangerous.
Real quick, Science says, okay, I'm late. I'm getting caught up. We do agree. Well, that's great, but still want you to tap in, be part of the conversation this evening. The link is in the chat. I put the link in the chat once again, so you don't have to go up the actual stream. And then, of course, the link is in the description. Make sure if you're watching family, you hit the subscribe and the like button, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up, as well as hit the notification bell. Once again, if you also go in the stream, I have the link to my latest book, right? Education and Leadership and Critical Theory. I'm a co-author on the book. I wrote an actual chapter on African American education for liberation, where I'm quoting, of course, the late great master teacher, Dr. Amos Wilson. And of course, I put the link to it, my Medium article, of course, A Letter to Hip Hop. I Used to Love Her. So make sure you follow me on all those platforms. And of course, you're watching a dual stream here on Lumumba Speaks, a Black Empowerment Initiative, where we believe we can gain a competitive advantage for always betting on Black. And Equaline Network, the Pan-African Social Media Extraordinaire. And we're here with, of course, Mr. Sandman calling straight out the 215. Shout out to, of course, the Illadale, and of course, Brother Steve Muhammad of Black Stage Productions and Knowledge for Life. And we're discussing, family, combating the hip hop to prison pipeline, the music of mass incarceration.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I appreciate, everything that Brother Sandman said once again. I think what we have to recognize is that we are behind enemy lines, and that until we're able to control the institutions within our own community, we will not be able to reestablish the Black family whatsoever, because the enemy, he controls the narrative at this point in time. He's the one that is framing what Black manhood looks like, what Black womanhood looks like. He's framing this for us because he controls the airwaves. So he has what in war is called air superiority.
That's right.
So when you have air superiority, you don't the opposition, they're on the ground. You just drop bombs on them, and the bombs that they're dropping on us is this culture that is a death style. It's not a lifestyle. It's a death style, and he participates in the death style himself because he is death. He is death. And so, maybe 20 years ago or 10 years ago, this might have sounded, somewhat racist. But, today, if we can't see that his culture is not even working for him, it's not even working for him. When we look at his children are committing suicide because they believe that there's no future for them, because he hasn't even created a future for them. So if he hasn't even created a future for them, what hope do we have as Black people? No, brothers and sisters, we need to follow what the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, and that is to separate ourselves mentally, physically, spiritually, in whatever way you can think of. We need to separate ourselves from him and begin to do something for ourselves. And we need to do it quick. And I'm going to tell you why we need to do it quick. Because Trump has already, as the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said, he's already peeled back the onion of civility, where he now feels that he no longer has to be what was called politically correct. I can now, as a white man, I can now say what I feel. And I can hang up my rebel flag or whatever flag it is. Confederate flag, which the American flag is no better, more
Right.
right under that than the Confederate flag. But not nonetheless, what I'm trying to say to you is I want to paint a picture real quick. Alligators, when alligators are in an environment where there's plenty of water and plenty of food, alligators get along. They can crawl over each other. You know what I'm saying? They can do all this and that. But when that area becomes confined, and when the food begins to be scarce, alligators become cannibalistic. I want to say to us, Black man and woman, that the economy is collapsing. And as the economy collapses, what do you think is going to happen? This is not rocket science here to understand what's about to take place. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan pointed out that in the scripture, it talks about fiery serpents. And he says that this is actually the white man who will begin to bite us. And I will just end it by saying this, is that when we read about the story of Lazarus, and when we read about the story of the prodigal son, we're reading about the Black man at the end of the white man's world. Lazarus, lazy are us, wouldn't do for himself. He sat at the foot of the rich man, begging for the crumbs that fell from his table. But at a certain point, the rich man was in hell and Lazarus was in heaven. The prodigal son, the same way. He lived a riotous life. And at a certain point, the people that he was among, their society began to just fall apart. And he said, well, I think I'm just going to get up and go back to my father. That's what we need to be starting to think too, brothers and sisters. We need to reject his culture and go back to our own culture. And for me, once again, the most powerful culture is the culture that can survive within this alien culture, and that is the Nation of Islam. And that is why the Nation of Islam and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan are the most feared by the controlling forces of this nation. And I'm just throwing that out there. But I would say that the Hebrew Israelites and the New Black Panthers and any organization that advocates doing for self and a conscious behavior, they're all on that list. So we all need to come together and stop set tripping, because he hate every last single one of us. You don't care what you call yourself. If you Black, like Malcolm said, if you Black, he didn't ask him if he was what religion he was. He just saw that he was Black and he started shooting. That's how it's going down.
So, all right, brother Sandman, I'm gonna let you close out. Brother Sandman.
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I'm back. All right, yeah, so I'm close out. So yeah, and like I was saying that, I got a rich history of being into music, you know what I mean? Like I don't know if you ever heard of like Philadelphia International back in the day, with that Philadelphia Motown sound and all them, with Patti LaBelle and all them back in the 70s.
Yeah, I'm familiar. I am familiar.
Yeah, my uncles was in that production company, you know what I mean, making music for, you know what I mean, the OJs and all them guys. So yeah, my uncles still do music now, you know what I'm saying? And then when I was a young man, I started a little rap group. This was back in the 90s, it had a little experience in it. But I would say that, hip hop, if you look at the name, so the thing about music is, music is just poetry, and it doesn't matter what genre of music it is. It could be, hip hop. It could be R&B. It could be country music, rock music. It's just poetic, and
right.
and it's not just the poetry, but it's the rhythm with the poetry. So back in the day when we made music, we all of the music was made with live instruments. You know, the when we did jazz, we had the guitar, the saxophone, all those different instruments, the drum. But when I believe it was Michael Jackson's Thriller album is when pop came on the scene, and his Thriller album was the first album that was all of the beats and the music in his album were digital music. And once music went digital, and you no longer needed, you know, skills or to be raised as a musician to learn how to play live instruments to make music. That's when hip hop took off. So you know now you get to the point now where you don't even have to, you know, practice or work with a band. You could just, you know, be in your house, make the beat with a computer and a beat machine, and you know, and put it on the internet. You know what I mean? And make money off of it.
Right.
So I think the thing happened was during the crack epidemic in the 1980s and the early 90s. What had happened was a lot of these wealthy drug dealers, they needed money. They needed a way to clean their money, so they had a whole lot of dirty money. And the only way they could make it look legit is to invest in a legitimate business. So that's how a lot of the degenerate music got introduced to the industry by a lot of, like, you know, street individuals investing in the music, and then their lifestyles got perpetrated in the music that we started to hear. A lot of the street music that we started to hear, and it kind of got away from you know, the conscious music, because I believe, like, Eazy-E, for instance, he was a gangster.
That's a good example. Yes.
And he sold a lot of drugs, and he used that drug money to start NWA, and you know, all of that stuff. So, and then it went from, you know, that, you know, gangster culture that, you know, when they were cleaning the drug dealers was cleaning their money in the music business. Then that once that degenerate music became successful, everybody started to copycat it. So they seen, okay, well, Tupac and Biggie Smalls, you know, was rapping about being a thug, and they became wealthy and rich. So if I want to become wealthy and rich, then I have to emulate that style. So that's how.
Can I push back just a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the thing about the so I definitely, I don't disagree with what you're saying at all. I think that in addition to that, right, I do think that while the drug dealers were trying to launder their money and they got into the rap, I do think that those who were controlling the distribution of rap, if you will, right, the music industry saw an opportunity. Now, understand that some of these prison industrial complex, some of these corporations are also invested in the music industry, right? And now understand that the prison industrial complex is on Wall Street. So by law, the prison industrial complex, by law, they have to make a profit. So in order to make a profit, they have to begin to fill the beds with bodies. How do you do that, right? And so I'm thinking, so I'm saying that I definitely agree with what you're saying, but I think also, I'm but in addition to, I think that they then use what you just explained, use that to begin to fill the prison beds.
Well, yeah. Well, it all started with the crackdown on the war on drugs. I believe it was a crime bill that was put into ratification. I think Biden was the one who wrote that crime bill.
Bruh.
And once that crime bill went into activity, the government decided to invest billions upon billions of dollars into law enforcement. So to keep that, that flow of money coming from the government into the law enforcement business, but it basically is, they basically need to manufacture crime because
There you
it's a
go.
business. It's a business.
So let me tap in real quick. There was a book written. I have it behind me somewhere, but I'm not gonna go looking for it. Right, titled Ali, what's the title of the book? Man, it's about the criminal justice system, the prison industrial complex. Yeah, but one of the things that they argue in the book was the chapter 1 says nothing succeeds like failure.
Mm.
Nothing succeeds like failure. And they state that the reason why they make that claim is because the prison industrial complex, the criminal justice system, is a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Absolutely.
Nothing succeeds like failure. The goal isn't to prevent crime, because if you prevent crime, people are going to lose jobs.
There you go.
Lawyers, prosecutors, bailiffs, judges, COs. So the goal is to allow crime to take place and then incarcerate people for as long as possible. Oftentimes, and most people are on probation, parole, simply because they can't pay the court costs.
Right.
Right. So something to consider.
That's the magic of I'm sorry. Yeah, I was just saying that's the magic of capitalism. All of these different businesses can feed off of crime. So it's not just, you could say that it's not just the lawyer or the attorney that's making money, but it's the college that trained that lawyer. So the lawyer went into hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt to get his lawyer degree from Harvard or something like that. So everyone's eating off of this stuff, they feeding off of it. Feeding off of degeneracy.
Right. So I got the title of the book. The title of the book is titled "The Rich Get Richer and the Poor Get Prison." That's the title of the book. Yes, I'm gonna put this in the chat. The rich get richer and the poor get prison.
And let me veg you back off of what both of you are saying, and check this out, right? So now you have people that are going into the prison industrial complex. So now you have some black people. Some of our black people say, well, if you don't do the crime, you won't have to do the time, right? But as you were saying, we're talking about the school to prison pipeline, right? So how do you get those who are in school to end up in the prison? So, Brother Lumumba, you were talking about the reading, right? So they know by your test scores in such a grade, I forget what grade it is.
Third grade.
The third grade. They know by the third grade if you're going to head towards, if you're going to be steered towards the prison industrial complex. And they are the ones that steer you there. Right. With this miseducation. The education that you and I are given in the school, in the prison, once again, it's not an education that brings out of you what's inside of you. It's an education that literally sets you up to think in a prison type of a way of thinking. Now, check this out, and I'll end it with this. I saw that where they did pictures, right? They showed a classroom, then they showed a prison classroom. They showed a cafeteria, and they showed a prison cafeteria.
Looks exactly the same.
All of it is the same. They don't want you to think, but you know what they don't show you? They don't show you how their schools are structured, which is nothing like the way that our schools are structured.
Right.
Their schools are structured to where the young people are more able to think and act independently.
Yeah.
And so, and they're not even taught the same things. We're not even taught. We come out of school and we don't even know how to budget a bank account.
Right.
How is that an education?
Right.
So yeah, I just
Yeah, and I think we actually did a program. This is years ago on propaganda, if you remember, and that's one of the things I covered in my actual program was presentation was the schooling, right, and how based on your social economic status and race, the type of education you receive was different. So we might have to revisit that and do a program on propaganda here.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But
you remember that show program?
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, I remember. It was a long time ago.
I think it was called propaganda.
Yeah, it was called propaganda. Yeah, it was called propaganda. It's probably about 10, 11 years ago. But I'm going to put it back a little bit from something you said earlier. You talked about set tripping, which I agree with, that we shouldn't set trip because we know under the system of white supremacy, anti-blackness, we all want Negro. But, for me, sometimes the devil is in the details. And you talked about the Hebrew Israelites. I take umbrage because of the teachings promote history that's ahistorical, right? They claim the transatlantic slave trade was Africans selling Hebrews. Completely false, right? Some of their teachings, they say that Africans are the enemy, right? So for me, that would be an issue to align with someone or organization or group of ideology or way of thinking that is inherently anti-African.
I definitely understand what you're saying. I think what I'm trying to say is that at this point in time, as we're under assault, is that we're going to have to pull ranks and allow everyone to be themselves, but at the same time recognize that we face a common threat.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It's very true.
When let's get safely to shore. Let's get safely to the shore, and then we can, argue about, this or that. It's like one person said to me, he said, there's two people on an island, right? And then they're arguing. One is arguing, man, we should go out there and catch some fish. And the other one is arguing, man, we should go climb up that tree and get some coconuts. And what they decided to do is you go out there and catch the fish, you go on up there and get the coconut, and then we'll bring it back. We gonna have a nice meal. So I think as a people, we have to begin to see just the commonalities of how we can move forward together.
I would agree. I would agree.
Yeah. Once our bellies are full, then let's.
I think it's what student minister Ishmael Muhammad said is operational unity.
Operational
right.
Unity.
The only issue is that with the Hebrew Israelites, my brother is a Hebrew Israelite, is that their belief is that the reason why they are oppressed is because they think that they're African, and that the only way they can overcome that oppression is by disidentifying with Africa.
Okay.
So I mean, that's not even someone that you can say, "Hey, we're all in this together," because they're like, "I'm not black." Right? That's the only thing. I get where you're coming from, but when you're dealing, that would be like, in my opinion, that would be tantamount to you saying, "Brother Lumumba, we have some issues in our community, and we just need to come together as black men." And then I get sweet and sassy and say, "I don't identify as a man." You would say, okay, well, this is a whole other issue, right? If you say you're not a man, that's kind of where I'm getting at there. But their fundamental, for example, there was a video on YouTube, and I've been in New York a couple of times. I'm quite sure you have as well. So, there was a video of the Hebrew Israelites in Harlem, New York City. Shout out to Harlem, 125th Street and Malcolm X Boulevard, MLK and Malcolm X, Lenox Avenue. Actually, that's known as African Square in Harlem. And we know Harlem is the most famous black community in the United States of America. But they had a video. They're on 125th Street. Young black boy, probably 13 to 14 years old, is walking down 125th Street. They call 125th Street the main street in Harlem. And the Hebrew is like, stop him and say, "Peace, brother, did you know that you are Hebrew?" And he said, "No, I'm not." He said, "Yes, you are. So you think you're not Hebrew because the school system, they tricked you and so on and so forth." And he said, "You're not African, you're Hebrew." And he said, "No, actually I am. My dad is from Ghana. My mother's Malayan. It's from Mali." They said, "Oh, you're the enemy." So that's what I'm saying. It's like,
Right,
I'm like, what the Flintstones is going on here? So I agree with you 100%. But if the people don't even want to identify as being black, or being a, what are we going to do? They believe is that what? The only way they can overcome their oppression is by disidentifying with being African.
Right. I mean, I definitely understand what you're saying. And I think that, circumstances is going to help us to see that all of these little labels that we've been using, it don't stop a bullet.
Right.
It don't stop a bullet. So, yeah. So, I mean, unfortunately, I think maybe we will have to taste a little bit of these fiery serpents to get us to understand that these little labels don't stop a bullet.
Absolutely. Sister Jewel says, because I said the rap and hip hop, including violence, etc., is a plan from the people who own these labels to mess up black kids' minds under assault. I could agree with that. Our existence is breaking the law. I would agree. You said religion is clouding this brother's vision. What do you mean by that? And who are you referring to? So yeah, but I think these are particular issues, and I just make the argument, particularly as someone who is African centered, that if you have individuals who are claiming that the solution to our problems, internal and external, is to disidentify with who we are, I think that is vehemently problematic and unhealthy, right? Because we know part of the issues that we have now is that we're seeking to disidentify with who and what we are, and try to identify with what the individuals who caused our problems in the first place. So just something to, of course, consider and be cognizant of, because what tends to happen when you coalesce with individuals who think that way, down at some point that becomes an issue. Right, that becomes an issue, right? If you're trying to teach history, so it becomes an issue. I can say this as someone who teaches African American history for a living. It becomes an issue, right? So just something to, of course, be cognizant of. But I'm not trying to demonize anyone in the group, but it's just it's an issue. If I stated, hey, black people, we actually aren't African, we're Native Americans. Well, I mean, at some point that would be an issue, right? Because it's really no way around it. You're falsifying history. So it's just something to consider. But I appreciate everyone for tapping in, being part of the conversation. We're going to close out. It's a Sunday evening. Many of us got to get up and go on that job and take care of business. Let me see here. Sister Jewel says, a lot of those Israelite camps are not giving right info, but we as Hebrews are not all about the info. Very good. Understood. Appreciate that. Very good. So until next time, you all know what to do. Make sure, once again, you hit that subscribe and the like button. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Hit that notification bell. You watched another dual stream from, of course, Bequaline Network, the Pan-African Social Media Extraordinaire, and, of course, LumumbaSpeaks.com, a Black empowerment initiative. We believe we get a competitive advantage by always betting on Black. Great appreciation. Make sure you give a virtual round of applause to Brother Steve Muhammad, my big brother in Black Power. Of course, the progenitor CEO of Black Sage Productions and Knowledge for Life. And, of course, our resident guest, always welcome here at Lumumba Speaks, Mr. Sandman from the Illidale to 215. Until next time, family, you all know what to do. Peace.
Okay, Tom, this is the Hearst Let's Go lightning round. You ready?